Welcome to the Code of Entry podcast, where we cloud the issues with facts and help you upskill to stay on the digital edge. Here's your host, Greg, with the latest.
Hey team, Greg here with your Code of Entry podcast. I hope this episode finds you doing well. Today we've got some awesome stuff in store for you. I've got Justin Cleveland that we're going to be interviewing from Authenticate. They've got this really cool cloud browser named Silo. If you've never heard of a cloud browser before, don't worry, you're not alone. Most people probably haven't. So it's this really cool tool that allows you to remove a lot of risk from your desktop. And not only does it allow you to remove risk from your desktop, but it also allows you to provide yourself or your employees common tools with common access privileges from a cloud environment so that you can log in and get access to your resources from anywhere in the world, while at the same time keeping your home computer, your work network safe. So really cool tool. Excited to have him on, and we'll get to that right after this.
We just wanted to say thanks for listening and remind you to follow, like, and subscribe to Code of Entry on all your favorite channels. We appreciate having you on the team and any help reaching out to others. Always remember, we're here to help you, providing cutting-edge digital insights into this ever-changing industry. Now back to the show.
Hey team, Greg here from the Code of Entry podcast. Today, I've got a guy that just didn't know how to say no, thankfully. So I've got Justin Cleveland with me. And Justin, been a friend for a couple of years. He's working for Authenticate now, and originally came from you were at Recorded Future before that, right?
I was, yeah.
So got Justin on. Really appreciate him coming on today. Gonna blow your minds, I hope, about some technologies that you should already be using. So I don't want to kind of belabor this too much. I really want to get started with this cloud browser thing that Authenticate has, and then I'm going to tell a story about RSA because it's one of my favorite stories. But what is a cloud browser?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. Well, cloud browser is exactly that, right? I use the Netflix analogy. You've probably heard this before because you've been around me for far too long. If you recall the early days,
too long. I see. Okay.
Too long. That's why I took this phone call. You've had to hear all my crappy stories far too many times, so I owed you one. You remember the early days of Netflix? They would actually send you a DVD, and that DVD you'd either have to put it in your computer or in your DVD player and run the DVD locally to watch the movie.
Got me through college.
That's basically what a normal web browser does today, right? That web browser is reaching out to the web, going to the website that you point it to, is grabbing from that website an arbitrary blob of code and is running it locally on your machine. Well, Netflix figured out pretty early on that's kind of a crappy business model, right? You have to do an awful lot of stuff and whatever. They switched to a streaming model whereby the DVD is still running. It's just running in infrastructure that they control, and they're streaming pixels down to your TV. Much better user experience, right? Rather than having to go to the post office, all that, and all that. We're effectively doing the same thing with the browser. So we're spinning up a browser in our cloud environment, which is hosted by Google, and we are then streaming that browsing experience down to you via remote desktop protocol display, so an XRDP. Now, what that does for you as an end user is there's really no change to your behavior, right? You click on our icon instead of Google Chrome. You go to your websites just like you normally would. Everything works the same. It's the same user interface. It's based on Firefox. The big difference is if you click on that cat video that your grandma sent you, that's actually a Russian watering hole type of attack. That's all self-contained within our cloud environment. So when you close out the web session, it's as if it never occurred on your computer. So kind of a fundamental transformation for how people could get online safely.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is neat. And then sometime between the first and second interaction, I'm like, wait a minute. You do what? Like, there's so much potential from the cloud browser for, so many applications, from, your cyber hygiene to providing tools to your employees, to easy ways to bring your own device, to just being able to know what's coming in and out of your network, right? Like, there's so many huge implications to this technology. It's crazy. For anybody listening, it's like unasked for, unsolicited, unpaid like plug here. It's like, I personally really think if you're going to do one thing for cybersecurity, one thing for your digital hygiene at all, it should be using Silo, right? It should be using Authenticate's cloud browser. Like, it's the first place you should go. It's like, it's not expensive. You don't go directly at harmful things anymore. You can click on emails from African princes and still be okay, right? Like, I don't know. Am I overselling? Like, and I'm not even supposed to. I'm not really selling, right? Am I over evangelizing for you here?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, that's like, I don't tell the story lightly, right? Like, I was pretty early at Recorded Future, and Recorded Future was a rocket ship. Still continues to this day to be a rocket ship. And funny story. Your former boss, Mr. Kim, is who introduced me to Scott Petrie. So I took a meeting with Scott, and Scott's a little bit of an eccentric guy, but we hit it off right off the bat. And once he explained to me, and again, I'm the head of sales for Authenticate, so I run the entire go-to-market and our customer interactions. So when he explained to me the addressable market was everybody on the planet, that got me pretty excited, right? And I don't think that's necessarily still something that we're shying away from. But we've really viewed Silo as more of a platform, right? You can do an awful lot with our platform. We have customers doing things like globally distributed workforce for a major Fortune 500 company. Well, what they did is they put their Gmail applications behind Silo. So the only way you can get into Gmail is if you're in our platform. So there's like really interesting use cases for how you want to deploy, right? You could deploy it where it's the only web browser you have. You could deploy it where some web traffic that you trust runs on the local browser. Other web traffic that you don't trust, like social media, can run in us. So a hybrid model. We could deploy it, a whole host of ways via, integration with your secure web gateway, integration with your firewall. It's really flexible platform that any organization, or frankly, we even sell individual licenses, can deploy largely, as with a click of a button.
It's like, hey, so I use a VPN and Silo both, right? And I think one of the things that kind of got me on Silo, though, because we talked about it, I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. I wasn't quite at that. I'm going to pay for this and use it for the first time level. But then because some of my data was in one of those kind of data losses, I remembered that y'all had the deal that allowed me to get on there for free. Mm-hmm. So is that still something that y'all do, or there's just too many people with compromised data these days to keep afloat with that?
Yeah, we still offer up to anyone that was part of the Office of Personnel Management data breach. We still do offer, pro bono licenses for a year as part of the cleanup for that. We feel like, given the fact that we're a very, very government heavy business, and we're very appreciative of our government customers, and we want nothing more than people that have government background, security clearances, to feel safe when they go online. So yeah, that is still something that we offer up, and I think we have creeping up to a few thousand people that have taken advantage of that, which for us is great, right? Like, yeah. I use it every day. I'm paranoid. I don't access my banking in anything but our web browser. I don't allow my employees to get into sensitive company web applications in anything but Silo. The best example I have is, and this, I have sales guys. We fire salespeople. Salespeople get fired as kind of part of the job.
I think you were reading my script, because I was going to bring that up. It was one of my favorite quotes forever. Sitting in a meeting one time, and you're like, "Hey, I fire a lot of people, and this really helps."
Yeah, well, it's true. We end up, salespeople is a high turnover. It's a high turnover industry, and what I've experienced in the past is salespeople value the customer data that you have as an organization very highly, right? Like, so Salesforce becomes an absolutely critical business application. We're able to actually lock Salesforce down behind our firewall in Silo, so that a salesperson doesn't even know their credentials to log in. And we have full visibility into everything they're doing in Salesforce. So in the event that somebody is leaving, we have the ability to download, to force them to not be able to download any data out of Salesforce. And if they do try to download data out of Salesforce, we would actually see that in the logs that occur in our cloud browser. So it's a wonderful tool for audit and oversight of, high risk business applications.
Yeah. And depending on the audience here, a lot of folks don't understand just how vulnerable your web traffic is, right? Just from your point of presence, your endpoint to that local router, to wherever in the cloud it's going to go. Like you're sitting at a Starbucks, it's great. We're on a Wi-Fi on your street, right? Like the ability for somebody to do a man in the middle attack or just view your traffic, the ability is high. Shoot, I mean, let's go conspiracy theories. The ability for a nation state actor to own part of the router that you're communicating with, right? Like all that stuff exists.
That could never happen.
Never, right? So it's like,
just ask all the other cybersecurity vendors. That would never happen. The supply chain is completely secure, as we've seen recently.
Yeah, that's true. If anybody doesn't know the inside joke, just supply chain cyber in the Google machine, you'll be caught up. So I wanted to ask you too about like one of my favorite things ever is going to RSA conference. It's awesome, right? You walk around, you get this awesome swag from everybody. You get to see great ideas. You get to see some fake ideas. It is what it is. And of course, we're at RSA. So RSA conference, biggest cybersecurity conference. It takes over San Francisco for a few days. Like it's awesome. If you've never been, you should go. All right. So we get to RSA and we're trying to find the Authenticate booth. We're like, hey, Authenticate has a booth like right here, but I don't see it. And then you pay attention for a minute and there's this Francis Archibald Key Esquire. So for everybody, that's fake when you put the acronym together. There's this fake security solutions booth up. And they've got this like cast of like 3 or 4 actors sitting there like selling snake oil. And I think over the course of RSA, you get one of like the most popular Twitter followers from the event. You're getting retweeted. Like half the people love you, half the people absolutely hate you because you're calling them out for being fake, right? Like that was awesome. And I keep this here all the time. So
I see the bottles and tinctures there.
So this is on my desk all the time, by the way, just so it's not like a one-time thing. So I've got my machine learning liniment here and my tincture for advanced persistent threats.
You sprinkle that on your keyboard.
You give away all my stories, man. Nation state actor salve, and then the best one, extract of artificial intelligence. Because there are a lot of people out there like, what we really need is AI. We could just use machine learning. Okay, there's a time and a place for everything. You want some AI? Hold on, I got you right. I'm gonna open it up and put it all over my keyboard. There you go. It's
your AI. Yeah, exactly. It's
AI. So
most AI is like matchy computer matching. Like it's actually not AI. So that was our tongue-in-cheek shot at the industry.
Yeah, and particularly at the particular one that we were at, right, was that, there are all these folks who are like, oh yeah, we use artificial intelligence in our algorithms. So it's like, you're using artificial intelligence to tell me what color this is, right? I can look at it and tell that. Like you're using it for trivial things. So yes, technically that is computer vision. I got it. But you're using computer vision to tell me if it's cat or a dog, not to do anything advanced. So whatever. So I had to bring up that.
It's like the Silicon Valley story. It's like I think they did the best take on artificial intelligence. I don't know if you watched the show, but they have a character on there, and his name is Jin Yang, and he made an app that was hot dog or not a hot dog. And I think that was one of the greatest uses or poking fun at machine learning and AI. Right? Like, cool. You told me it's a hot dog.
Yeah. Thanks. So What inspired you to do that, right? Like, I mean, it was awesome, right? We still talk about it all the time. It's a great story. Like, I've got the bottle sitting here. Like, what possessed y'all, like, instead of like evangelizing your awesome game-changing technology to go out there and be like, hey, all these people are lying to you?
Yeah, part of it was 2 things. We're a weird company, and we kind of take pride in being a little bit weird. And that was our that was us showing a little bit of our internal kind of attitude towards things. We're a little more effervescent than a lot of other kind of buttoned up companies. And the second thing is our customers' experience, right? Like our customers are trying to solve really, really hard problems, and they are flooded with nonsense and buzzwords from the cyber industry about, if you just use machine learning, all your cyber problems would go away. We have all of these things. If you just deployed our product, your world would be nirvana. Like, it's just not true, right? Like we've seen recently with what's happened with, some of the compromises that we've had recently. It's like, these are really, really hard problems. There's really, really smart people thinking about them. So we wanted to kind of play play tongue in cheek with it, right? The cyber industry is $100 billion a year industry. If any of the products out there that are claiming to be kind of a panacea to fix all this stuff worked, we wouldn't be in this situation. So we don't come at it from we're a silver bullet to solve all your problems, like, because we're not. But we solve a very narrow and very hard problem to solve, which is, the browser is the Trojan horse into your network. And if you can get that off of your network, what we do is neck down your attack surface, right? If you have a lot less attack surface to look at, your SOC analysts become that much more effective at hunting really hard stuff. So it was tongue in cheek. It was fun. It did get a lot of play. It got retweeted thousands of times. We really made some of the big players in the industry mad, to the point where we actually had a top 25 cybersecurity company who was in the booth next to us actually come up and ask our actors to stop saying things like, "You need 5G, we got 6G," because they viewed it as such an insult to their technology.
So awesome. Oh, so yeah, I mean, whether you're a business or just somebody sitting at home, it's like, I mean, the web browser is it, right? Like, it is your attack surface, because you can button up as much as you want. You can try to do the right things. Or like there's a lot of memes out there, but there's a meme out there that's like, oh, hey, we have this perfect system and the opponent is, right? And it's this human error character, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
We're the worst, right? I'm gonna look at something and I'm be like, oh, that looks legit. I haven't paid my credit card yet. Hold on. Or I won the lottery. Click, and then all of a sudden, all your defenses are by the wayside because you're executing code on your browser. Where if you can control everything that comes in and out, yeah. Especially, go ahead.
You hate to say it, but your people are your weakest link, right? They're your greatest asset, especially if you're a business or a large organization. But they're also your Achilles heel. People consistently will disappoint you, in my experience.
Yeah, it's like I kind of compare this to like the Japanese Toyota production system, right? Like, one of the great improvements that Toyota made was they made these decouplers between process lines in the factory. So sorry if I'm going a little manufacturing on you, but what they did is they made it so anywhere that something was ever supposed to be set, there was a shape and form for it, right? So if something wasn't just right, you would know right away. You could throw it out. It ensured quality, but it's kind of the same thing here, where we have so much traffic going in and out. It's hard to inspect to see what the right things are. Whereas if we take, over 95% of it and put it through one way where it's not a risk anymore, then all your other little things can be inspected, right? They can be looked at. You can take, better analysis of it. You can see if something's beaconing or trying to get through that's not supposed to. So I don't know. Yeah. Big fan. I'm just going to keep coming up with ways to say that, people should get silo, right?
We love it.
So
I've been saying it for 4 years. People should get silo. We've got some good traction. So.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where I was going to go next, right? Like, so, a lot of businesses hit hard by COVID. A lot of new folks teleworking. How does silo play into that? Because I guess knowing what I know about the technology could be a big opportunity for you to help some other people keep doing their job in these tough times, right?
Yeah, so we've seen some really good success stories from the teleworking community. COVID happened so fast that most organizations didn't have a plan for mass telework. And what we saw was VPN capacity was relatively fixed for most organizations. You can't just buy more VPN. There's a supply chain that goes to support VPN that's largely hardware based. And that's what really kind of choked during the early days of COVID. So a lot of organizations were looking for alternatives to VPN to kind of neck down the security aspect. And that's when we really saw an uptick in our business, where we had large government organizations start to authorize our products used for home work. And that solved two problems. One, it gave the government an idea of what those people were doing when they were working from home because of the audit logs that we have. And perhaps more importantly, the government didn't have enough things like CAC card readers or excess laptops to give to all the people that didn't already have one issued. So there was really a dearth of the ability for them to even do telework. So they had to allow bring your own device. Well, bring your own device creates a whole host of issues because it's by nature an untrusted device in someone's home network. So we helped solve a lot of that problem. And then as we kind of got further down into COVID, people were realizing that people were working globally, right? You had no idea who the ISP the traffic was going over. You had no idea if you could trust that ISP, depending on what country your workforce was in. So it was potentially an issue for individual users at home. If they were trying to execute a sensitive mission, say in anti-money laundering at a major bank, and they were in a country that had a reputational problem with money laundering. If that ISP was providing data to the government, it probably would have put a triangulation together to say, hey, this analyst is looking at money laundering in our country. We don't like that. So it was a potential health and safety risk for a lot of our employees. And because our browser is completely non-attributed back to an individual end user, it actually provided a safe way for people to execute their missions from anywhere globally.
I mean, is that it? Man, that's awesome.
But we had our own challenges too, right? I mean, we're pretty lucky that, as a Silicon Valley company, we were pretty flexible in our ability to work remote, but it did take us, Greg, it took us 3 months for us to get a cadence together, largely because we had a globally distributed workforce. Our CEO spends most of his time in Berlin, and he was, largely unable to travel. Almost all of our engineering is done on the West Coast. So you have a 3-hour time difference there. And then, almost my entire organization is here in the Washington, D.C. area. So to get a communication cadence that was successful and repeatable for our business took a while. I mean, my days were stretched because I had to spend so much time on Zoom meetings. And I felt like I missed the human interaction, and I overcompensated for that with Zoom, which was challenging.
And now you're back.
I'm back.
Recording this on Zoom, by the way, everybody.
I'm back.
Yeah, it's
shout out to Zoom.
Yeah. So it's I mean, that was interesting, right? When COVID hit and we all went virtual, and this has nothing to do with Silo for a minute, but it's like it was really challenging because there's this quote unquote new normal. And what it is a lot of folks that care about their organization, their business success, going all in to make it work, right? And like work-life balance is out the window. And I think, if you're looking at the date on this thing, so we're recording this December 2020, right? 2021, I think the thing we've all got to get back to is some type of work-life balance, right? Because right now there's not a lot of opportunities to do other stuff, but there's still no downtime for a lot of folks trying to make their companies succeed, right? In this climate, it's, it speaks a lot to human resiliency, but at some point we're going to have to figure out as organizations, as leaders, how do we stop going back to the well and allow people to recharge and, exist in that pre-2020 environment, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we don't know when that will be. I mean, we try to do as much business continuity planning as, any company, should or would, but what's normal look like in 2021? We don't anticipate anyone really going back to the office until we hit, 60, 70% vaccination rate. And we don't know when that is. We're hopeful that, vaccines start rolling out in the April timeframes to the general population. But, we're prepared to see all of 2021 be in a remote or telework kind of environment. It just makes it really hard. I personally just miss interacting with my team. That's the thing I miss the most. Like I can stomach the 14-hour days and whatnot, and the business uncertainty as budgets shrink and continuing resolutions hit, et cetera. What I can't stomach for much, much longer is just not seeing my teammates. It's just driving me nuts.
Yeah, I think that's where we're lucky, right? Our team's pretty small, the whole team, right? So it's like our team's small, so we still get to see each other, right, and interact. So we've basically made that closed circle of just us. Yeah. The thing I miss though is it's hard to stay relevant, right? Like technology changes all the time and nothing changed that. But now we're missing the opportunities to engage with folks and see what the newest stuff is, like how we should be doing our jobs, tomorrow versus, concentrating on last year's technology. Like I told somebody recently, hey, if you wanted to ask me what state of the art was in 2019, I would have been very confident I was telling you the absolute truth. And now sitting here in 2020, okay, I hope I can tell you better than most people, but I don't have that degree of confidence.
So what are you interested? Let me turn the table here, Greg. So what tech are you tracking now that you think is kind of interesting in the marketplace?
Man. So I think some of the interesting / concerning things are definitely 5G, right? I think that's the easy button for the answer here. Is 5G's got a lot of implications on our ability to transmit and transport data, because a lot of the use cases that we look at are definitely restricted bandwidth use cases.
Yeah.
And, I think unlimited time and resources, like if I had this research and development fund, I really think that the thing that's out there that needs to be fixed is kind of first mile, last mile transport. A lot of places have great pipes and infrastructure. We need to do better, but that's a government problem. But that first mile, last mile transport's a real problem. And I guess maybe expanding, like I'm super geeking out over Elon Musk and Starlink, right? Like, that thing's awesome. So my dream of like retiring to a Caribbean island somewhere was always like, yeah, I could do that, except for I'm a dork and I wouldn't have internet. So I don't know. Well, I don't know. Now there might be internet, so I might have to redo the whole decision analysis here. So
it's that's a really interesting place. Starlink and some of the things that Musk is doing with Tesla and et cetera, are really, really exciting. I mean, some of the computer vision stuff that's coming out of the autonomous driving cars is really exciting to me. I think the biggest trend that I'm excited about and would love to hear your take on it is like low code, no code. There's so many. We have such a lack of computer scientists in this world that can actually write code and make things useful, that I love to see the trend in organizations moving to a low code, no code type of software. Like it's just, it democratizes the ability to enter the tech space, in my opinion, which is super cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll say that, so we make a lot of websites, right? And 80-90% of those will be WordPress based, almost for that reason, right? Like, so, hey, spoiler, I can code, but why if I don't have to, right? Like I can go up there and pop up a WordPress template that I can make look however I want. But instead of trying to figure out, how to reinvent the wheel for doing these 10 functions that every website wants to do, I just go to WordPress and I'm like, oh, download these plugins. I think the thing I'm afraid of with low code, no code is we're already at pretty high risk for cyber things, right? And not every other country has the same maybe ethics standard that we do. So I think one thing with low code, no code is just figuring out, what's the code review for things that are sensitive? And then honestly, if they're not sensitive, they're not. Because I joke with people all the time, they're worried about like, I've got Alexas all over my house. Hopefully you don't hear one here start talking about it.
It just lit up. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I've got Alexas everywhere, right? So people are like, oh yeah, but somebody's listening to you. Well, congratulations. Anything I'm talking about in front of Alexa, if somebody wants to listen, they can. And I'm actually protecting our national security because they're listening to me and means they're not listening to somebody else, right? So maybe that's also that low code, no code, right? Is figuring out, okay, what things are actually high risk and just what aren't, right? And putting the right effort towards solving the problem. We've got to, in the security world, it's always, hey, there's one standard. If the shoe fit, well, why does there have to be like, is this a one-day throwaway fix? Then I should be able to use it, right?
Yeah. And that's always the balance, right? Is especially in the business world, there's a trade-off between security and productivity. And unfortunately, it's a sliding scale. You can't have the no security, which would likely result in the highest productivity. You get stuff done, but the business risk is too high. And when the security pendulum swings too far in the other direction towards locking everything down, productivity absolutely suffers. If you put yourself in unrealistic expectations from a security standpoint, it can be a really challenging thing to overcome.
Yeah.
You got to do business at the speed of business, and sometimes security can get in the way of that.
Yeah. And at the, so we were talking before we kind of kicked off the podcast, and one of the things we were talking about was education. I think that I kind of like to develop that kind of two ways. One is, hey, what'd you do in college? Was it worth it? And then the other is the route of, hey, if you had to learn a skill today, like what's the thing that everybody needs to learn to be trendy? And I'll kind of go with my view first.
Yeah,
so that you can't turn the tables on me again.
Please. Yeah, exactly.
So I think, okay, I've got a couple degrees, I've got some certificates, and I think that they're important, but more from what I learned about myself, right, versus what I learned in the curriculum. And I think there are a lot of folks that hang their hat on their degrees, like, oh, well, I have, a bachelor's from so-and-so and a master's from so-and-so, and then all the PhDs in the world, like the degree gave them something, right? And I kind of approach it from well, I have a degree, which just means that I went to class and I learned, but it's just that many hours that I spent figuring out how I learned. So that's what, if I look back like longingly on my time in academia, whether it was, in college or when I was teaching at West Point, it's, hey, I actually know how I learn now. So I spend a dumb amount of hours on like Udemy. I love the Udemy website.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of hours on Udemy because I'll like be like, oh, yep, the last time I was like developing web things as a real full stack developer was like 2016. Let me buy the 2020 ultimate web developer thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'll do that. Or, hey, I was really good with Elastic 6. Elastic 7 came out. Let me look at it. Kubernetes, Ansible, all these other buzzwords, right? It's like I can pay $10 for a course to get myself spun back up, right?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of in the same boat. It definitely gives you a framework it gave me a framework for how I learn. I mean, my undergrad was largely spent drinking Miller Lights, and that was great. I learned a lot about, human consumption of Miller Lite.
I went to West Point. I didn't get that lesson.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing.
we can make that happen next time I'm in town for COVID, post COVID. But overall, I think I'm less bullish on traditional education than I was because I see how my kids are currently interacting. They're in a remote telework or teleschool environment, and I get so proud of my daughter because she's 6 at this point. But if she doesn't know how to do a problem, I used to go to my parents or go to my teacher. First thing she does, YouTube. The YouTube video explains to her, how to conjugate a sentence, things like that. Like that's just really, really powerful. The one thing I think I took away from my education was largely from my master's degree at Penn, which kind of put me way out of my comfort zone. I went to grad school right after undergrad, which isn't really necessarily traditional at a school like that. And it taught me how to interact with different types of people that were very different than people I kind of grew up around. These were politicians, people that had made millions of dollars at, Goldman Sachs and then wanted to go back and get an advanced degree. These were, really some highfalutin folks. It taught me how to interact with people across the spectrum, right? I could have a conversation with, the guy drinking Miller Lite in a dive bar, but I could also, feel confident in myself and my ability to communicate. To talk to, at the time, Governor Ed Rendell of Pennsylvania was one of our professors. So it was like, that was invaluable to me. And it kind of gave me a lot more confidence than I had, as a 21-year-old guy graduating undergrad. But for the rest of it, I'd rather use YouTube if I could going forward.
Yeah. So somebody out there aspiring to upskill in an area, what do you think? What's the upskill target, you think?
I think there's just so many web resources at this point, right? Like we've gotten to the point where college has become almost an expectation, but like the hard skills, learning to code, right? Like learning to code is really, you code, it's ultimately no different than learning a foreign language, right? You don't need to go to college to learn a foreign language. Like there's a whole bunch of better ways to do that. One of which is immersive, right? Like if you start to practice coding, that's immersing yourself in code. There's an awful lot of awesome repositories like GitHub. There's a lot of tutorials on YouTube. Try that first, right? You can always go for more finished or polished instructions, more formal education later, but see if you like it, right? Like, I don't know, my undergrad degree was in political science. I don't use that very much. Could I have gotten a similar education by reading history books on my own and not cost myself 6 figures? Probably.
Yeah. So I think if I had to throw a recommendation out there for like one topic to upskill on, and this is totally just based off my preferences, it would probably definitely be like cloud solutions architects, right?
Yeah.
So, and I look at that as like, I like to be a jack of all trades, not necessarily a master of any. I remember when I'd be like recruiting cadets at West Point to come to the systems engineering department. I'd be like, hey, that's cool. You can go to these engineering departments that are like mech or civil or electrical, and you can become like an engineer that's really good at solving an aspect of a problem. Mm-hmm. Or you can be the person that understands holistically how to solve that problem, and you manage the team. And what does managing a team sounds like? It sounds like leading soldiers. But you know what the other cool thing is about being the leader of a team? You get paid more, right? So it was all my selfish like sales pitch of, hey, it's fine. I might not be the best person at every single angle, but being well-rounded and able to like solve problems. And I think that there's so many cloud technologies out there that are having a big impact, along with some of the technical things, the Ansibles, the Kubernetes, the Dockers, right? But figuring out how that all fits together to provide a solution, I think is super valuable, because then you don't necessarily have to be the best person slinging code or the best person doing one particular aspect of the problem, but you understand the technology space, right? So I think that's where I'm at. I've spent a lot of time like trying to make sure that, I've picked Amazon because it's hard to be good at every provider with all their terminologies. So I think that's where I would go. And I think I did forget to ask you a question earlier, and I'll stop putting you through the firing squad here.
Sure.
Why'd y'all pick Google over some of the other cloud vendors?
So couple different reasons. We really like the fact that at the time that we selected Google, they were furthest along in FedRAMP accreditation globally. So we take as you know, we're a security company. We take our security. We are a FedRAMP solution. So we take our security very seriously. And that was very appealing to us, to have global points of convergence with Google and leveraging their infrastructure to make our FedRAMP process that much cleaner and tighter. So that was one. Google is in a fight in the cloud space with Amazon, with Microsoft, with some of the other large players, and we were able to kind of leverage our business, which was attractive to them from a partnership perspective, to drive price down. That's part of the goal of us, is to keep our prices as cost effective for our customers as possible. So we were able to really get what we feel is a mutually beneficial relationship with Google based on price. And I think the third reason we picked Google is sort of strategic, right? Google's a household name. When we walk into our customer sets and they ask, what is our infrastructure published on? They really generally feel good about our infrastructure being on Google, giving its reputation as a world leader in, not just cloud computing, but, the thing you use the most in your life is probably some part tied to Google. But it's a tough choice. And we still do have infrastructure on Amazon, and we have other infrastructure players that we use to make sure that we're diversified and we aren't single threaded. But we feel pretty good about Google.
Yeah, because I remember we had that conversation a couple of years ago where it was like, hey, we'd really prefer you be on this infrastructure, and your answer was, yeah, we could totally do that, but we went with this provider for a reason. So I think it kind of circles me back to talking about like having people that understand the cloud in general is, hey, guess what? You're not locked into one. I know probably shouldn't say this out loud, but they're all generally the same, but they all have different business models, right? So Azure focuses on what it wants to do well. Amazon focuses on what it wants to do well. I think Google at the time had the best CPU utilization for you. So you were able to get better customer performance, right? So you, like any company out there, like, look at the cloud vendors and go with the best one. You're not going to be completely locked down because they all generally do the same thing, but it's a great time to be in tech, right? There's just a lot of awesome options out there without having to stand up your own data centers. Yeah.
And we looked at the market, seriously. We did reviews of all the major players in the cloud space. And, like your point was kind of spot on. We were getting better performance with Google at a lower cost. And also because Google was trying to kind of catch up to Amazon and Microsoft, they were a little more pliable in doing things like sourcing chipsets that we really liked, that made our performance better. So, we had, not to say we had leverage over Google. I'm not going to give myself that much credit, but they were more willing to come to the table with some exotic ideas that our cloud solution engineers were proposing, than some of the other big players that are like, you guys are, you're servicing, a million sessions a month. Like, I don't really care about that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right. So what did I miss? What should I have asked you that I need to know from Authenticate or Justin Cleveland or anything else other than I have on a really good polo today? What did I miss?
I don't know, man. I think we covered a lot. The thing, this, I know I don't know that much, so I wouldn't purport to tell you what you missed. You're a lot smarter than I am, Greg.
This is being recorded, so I've got that on audio.
You put it on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, right. That's it.
It's my endorsement.
Awesome. Well, we covered a lot, and I really appreciate your time because, whether the person that's listening to this, is a Fortune 50 or a startup or just sitting at home, right? Like I really believe that Authenticate is something that's a tool that should be in everybody's toolkit, right? There's different tools for every problem. I think that one though is really the first thing that you should put in your toolbox. And I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I tell people all the time. So I appreciate you being on here and kind of evangelizing that, because the problem is, again, like you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of people that just don't know that cloud browsers are a thing, that the web browser is the worst thing on your computer because it's the first thing everybody goes to use. And, I appreciate you being here to help hammer that in.
No, this was awesome. Thanks for doing. You've been a friend, not just to me, but of Authenticate for, a long time now. And it's awesome to see you kind of expand your wings and get Code of Entry off the ground. And now you have a little bit of a sense on the startup life, which is, maddening and fun and terrifying all at once. But it's awesome to see.
Yeah. I always thought like, get this startup, be in charge. Okay. Get this startup and your customers are in charge and do cheetah flips to make sure you perform for them. Right. So it's interesting, right? Like, I want to work for myself. Okay. Well, by myself, I really mean for everybody. This is awesome.
Right. Yeah. But that's what makes it fun for me is like the customers, the market drives the future of the business, right? Like there's all kind of pit stops and pivots and turns and, but what's fun now and is it's repeatable, right? Like we now know what our customers use us for. We know what they don't want to use us for. So it's fun, picking up momentum and seeing deals close nearly every day. Like it's exhilarating. It's really fun. But it was hard to get here, as you know, trying to convince people to not click on Google Chrome and click on our browser. There's some pain of uptake there, but we've gotten past it. It's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And as we try to catch up with you, I think the environment we're trying to create here is like, I open up every meeting, every email. I'm always like, hey team, cause we want Code of Entry to be a partner with anybody that we work with, right? With any of our clients. I don't want it to be a kind of a customer relationship. I want it to be a teammate relationship so that we're all working towards the same goal, trying to get to the same place. And it's a little bit more, maybe more familiar than just being like, oh, hey, client X. Yes, we agreed to do 10 hours this week. We did 10 hours. Thank you. Right.
But yeah, and that's how we've had success, right? Like I said, we're a weird company, but I think one thing that our customers say universally is like, we will help solve a problem. I mean, there's a story that kind of goes back in company lore that we were working with a large government agency and they had a contingent of users that were overseas that were experiencing latency because we did not have our application servers in that country. And we actually, sight unseen, no contract in hand, sent one of our senior engineers to this country to actually physically put infrastructure close to this group of people to solve a problem. And we did it at no cost to our customer, right? We just did it because it was the right thing to do. And we knew if we solved a problem that, the purchase would come. And, lo and behold, that customer is now our second largest customer, 7 figures a year and continuing to grow. It's fantastic. We couldn't be happier about stories like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said it right thing to do. And stuff like that is why you were guest number 1 on the Code of Entry podcast.
Love it. Do I get like a t-shirt or anything, a coin?
Yeah, I'll make it happen. We'll get you some Code of Entry.
I love
swag.
that. You're solving a problem. I love that.
Yeah, I'll solve it. I might not have any to give you right now, but I'll get it in the mail.
I'm looking forward to seeing, someday a stock ticker of Code of Entry.
That's the plan. All right. Hey,
cool.
Thanks, Justin. And
thanks,
for everybody listening, thanks for listening to the Code of Entry podcast. We'll be back with another good episode. Probably not as good as this one. I don't know how you top this, but appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Code of Entry and online at codeofentry.com. Check back for new episodes or join the team by signing up for notifications. Until next time, keep hustling.